Welcome to Production Value Matters, the business event podcast, brought to you by Byrne Production Services. Here, we explore the different ways business events can bring value to your organization, the latest technological advances in the event space, as well as providing you with actionable strategies to make a business event a success. Let's create an exceptional event experience.
Welcome to another episode of Production Value Matters, the business events podcast. Today, I'm joined by Kerry-Anne Hamilton, Director of Events at #Paid. In the just 9 years, Kerry-Anne has climbed the ladder from a marketing account executive all the way to the directorship. She's an innovator and problem solver who's made quite a name for herself as the go-to for creative event and installations. Welcome to the show, Kerry-Anne.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. Look at that background. Is that enough Star Wars?
Thank you. Yeah, I can tell you that this background has actually gotten me a job in the past.
Really?
Yeah, I used to have a very neutral background and I was trying to be extremely professional. And then one day I was just like, I'm just going to embrace my nerdness. And I put, a couple of models in the background. And one of them, if you can see over to my left-hand side, is a particular lightsaber that I got on a client call and the director of events looked and squinted and said, "Is that the dark saber?" And I went, "Yes, it is." And we became the best of friends from that moment. So I encourage anybody who's trying to keep their personality out of their backdrops and neutralize things, display that because it'll be great.
Yeah, why not? Why not? I do the same. I collect vintage handbags, and you wouldn't believe how many conversations get started because of that. So I agree. Show your personality wherever you can.
Yeah, for sure. So I touched on it a little bit in the intro, but can you tell me a little bit about your career so far and what your motivations have been and how they've changed over the years?
Yeah, I actually have a really unique career path. So I grew up in Whistler, BC, which is a world-class, ski town. And out of that, I actually became a freestyle skier. And in doing so, I was a young female. There wasn't very many females doing the sport at the time. And I had the pleasure of working with brands like Oakley, Head, Cliff Bar, etc. And part of those sponsorships actually brought me out to trade shows. And this was the first time I had ever gone to a trade show. And I remember just being young and looking around and going, wait a sec, people attend events to see what brands are coming out with the next year. And they're that bought into the brand that they'd actually fly out to attend something. And from a very young age, I was mesmerized by that fact. So that took me into high school where I planned all of our, prom, graduation, etc. And then I decided to go to school for it. So I went to Tom's River University for tourism and events. Quickly decided that, school wasn't going to be for me and I could learn more by doing. So I left school, went into real estate marketing, and no surprise to any, my favorite part was planning the launch events. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to take a little bit of hiatus. I never took a gap year. So I'm going to travel around Europe and decide what I'm going to do with my life. And out of that, what came to be was I'm going to pick up my life in Vancouver and move to Toronto, where I landed a job at an experiential marketing agency called Vibrant Marketing. Worked there for just over 3 years, executing events on behalf of brands like BMW, Diageo, Carlsberg, and doing all of their experiential campaigns and activations. And then decided that it was time to make a move from agency side over to industry side, where I'm currently at #Paid, where I am the director of marketing. To answer your question around what motivates me and how that's changed, I think when I joined or kind of came into this industry, it was really about meeting people, planning experiences, and figuring out kind of what makes them tick. Now, what's changed out of that is actually creating experiences that have some longevity. So I now have the privilege of throwing, flagship events year over year, taking that feedback and actually just ensuring that those that are attending our events are getting the most out of them. Instead of just figuring out not just what makes them tick, but also how do I add as much value as I possibly can to their experience and, of course, for their valuable time. So that's how I think how my motivations have changed over time.
Yeah, I love that sort of long-term view. I think sometimes we are so, as event professionals, focused on the immediate because it's an immediate and relevant task that we're undertaking. But to have that sort of for lack of a better phrase, 30,000 foot view and that sort of long term in like emotional and intellectual investment, I think is an excellent thing to have.
Yep, exactly.
So tell me, what do you think is the mark of an excellent event or brand activation in your mind?
That's a great question. For me, it's cohesion. I think more often than not, we get bought into, okay, what's the decor or what's the theme or what are the topics? But I think cohesion of the entire event, from the planning process into the invitations and registrations, most importantly, the communication. What are people to expect when they're there? And then, of course, the attendees as well. So the cohesion of everything coming together and ensuring that those that are attending, again, are getting the most value out of the experience that you've planned, but ensuring that there's never like a minute lost for them while they're there. You know, events are a scary thing to go to, especially if you're going alone. So for myself, when I get invited to do anything, especially go to an event, I want to know start to finish what I am to experience, who is going to be in the room, what are some of the activities that are going to be there, what are the opportunities for me. And I think that that's where the word cohesion for me comes into play is planning with your attendees top of mind. That has to be the first thing that you're considering. And so making sure that that cohesion start to finish for that attendee is seamless and communicated well, I would say is the most important thing. And unfortunately is often overlooked just because there are so many moving pieces and details and usually stakeholders that go into events. And of course, everybody has a different, deliverable or expectation that's going to come out of it. And I think in being that event, manager, director, whatever your role is, it's your job to ensure that that cohesion is throughout. And if something doesn't fit within what you believe the event purpose to be, then it shouldn't be included.
Yeah. And so how do you navigate that challenge though? As you said, there's so many stakeholders who, not maliciously, but certainly because they have their own motivations, are trying to, sort of cram in things, right? We see this all the time on events where, hey, we've developed this sort of attendee journey, and then somebody from the sales or marketing department says, oh yeah, but we also have to do like Salesforce training, so let's throw a session in for that. And how are you navigating that with your stakeholders?
From the jump. I think the key is before you go out to market with an event is sitting down your internal team, making sure that everybody feels like their vision is being heard, and then actually signing off on what that vision is. So understanding from sales, from my point of view, is for them to be able to get leads. But from the marketing department, it's ensuring that they have brand awareness and can feel our culture. Then from the people that sponsor our events, of course, for them, it's either liquid to lips, it's brand awareness, it's education. And so I think at first, ensuring that their internal team is aligned, and that can take multiple meetings. Like, don't get me wrong, very much simplifying this process, but ensuring that you get everybody's buy-in, what their objectives are, getting them to sign off on that. Because just wait, 2 weeks down the road, they're going to turn around and be like, oh, in addition, can we add this? I'm sorry, we can't for this event because we've actually already signed off on what we described as what the plan to be. And so for me, it's really the internal communication before going out to market. I think more often than not, you get itchy, right? You're like, our event's coming up. Let's bring it out into the public. But no, making sure that as a team internally, everybody is bought in, signed on the dotted line, and anything that's outside of that vision is going to have to wait until the next one.
Yeah, I love that attitude of, obviously with grace and respect to say, I really love this Salesforce training session, but that's not what this event is. And so
Mhm.
let's hold that off. And I think that's an amazing trade-off. So when you started at hashtag paid, you said on LinkedIn that you revamped all the existing event infrastructure, hired a team to support the go-to-market strategy, and tested the strategy with pre-planned events. Can you talk me through that process? Like, how did you start and how did it roll out?
Transparently, the jump from agency side to industry side was a lot larger of a gap than I initially anticipated. Before I was agency, it's very transactional at times. You come in, they have their brief for you, they have what they're looking to get out of it and have a budget. And you go ahead, you execute, you report on it, and you're lucky to do the same event twice. Then coming over to industry side, I quickly discovered that we were doing events, but we weren't doing events with necessarily purpose or an understanding as to the why. And I think you always have to go back to the why. And so for me, I came in and the first thing I wanted to do was nothing but meet with the internal team. I wanted to understand how I could actually impact this business and the individual cohorts which are within our company. So I met with our CSM team, I met with our strategy team, of course, met with the marketing team, but most importantly, met with the sales team. At the end of the day, my role as my profession, as an event director, is growth marketing. It is a growth marketing channel. So I need to go to sales and not only get their buy in for what I believe the vision to be, but first and foremost, go to them and say, what do you need? You've attended these events in the past. What was missing? What did you like? And what do you believe needs to be added? And quickly did I discover that I spent over 4 weeks meeting with the sales team and kind of not only listening to them, but actually developing a plan with them because I quickly discovered that if I did not have the sales team buy in, I was not going to be successful. And I think like anybody and any individual, it's ensuring that you get their buy-in, therefore their voice is heard, therefore they actually feel a part of the success that is usually later to come. And so that's how I revamped everything. Then I realized that as an event professional, the way that I communicate and the way I plan isn't the same way that the rest of the company is going to do it. So I completely revamped the process in such a way that I could have a planning document and do it the way that I see fit, but then I was going to communicate in a manner that works best for them. Those platforms being email, because they're constantly, of course, on their email, and then of course Slack for a more casual approach. So that's how I revamped it at first. And that took me just over 3 months to do. Then I developed the why behind what we were doing. And then I slowly but surely moved our dollars away from doing sponsored events because the ROI was not making sense to me. It was way too low for the investment that we were investing into it. And figured out the pieces of those sponsored events that we liked and started to develop our own events. And from there, that's really where the game changed. And that was about 6 to 9 months in, I would say, that I started testing own events. And today I'm proud to say that over 90% of the events that we do, we own and execute ourselves. And that gives us full control and autonomy as to what each of these events look like instead of having to, fit into a shoebox sponsorship that maybe only hits a few of our objectives, but not all of them.
And so in what ways did you incorporate that sort of deep dive insight with your colleagues into your process? And have you formalized that on an ongoing basis?
It's a consistent check-in. So I meet with the team once a quarter to ask them internally what processes are they working for you, or are they not? And what would they like to see? Rationale, again, is if I don't have their buy-in, I will not be successful. And so what I did is I actually, in meeting with them, I would just sit and shadow them. I wanted to know what was their tech stack, what were they using, how were they communicating internally, how were they communicating to clients, and how were they project managing themselves? And quickly realized that they loved Google Sheets. Google Sheets with a bunch of different tabs is what worked best for the majority of them. And so why couldn't I just replicate that for the event types that I was looking to do? One overview sheet that's a quick check-in, hey, what's going on this quarter? And then individual, tabs that actually had broken down the specific event details, which frankly, I don't think that they really care about. It's more, where do I need to be? When do I need to be there? How do I get people there? And where do I actually direct traffic, AKA my clients, to get their buy-in to attend these events? And so it was individual sheets that I have used and we continue to use. Is it the best way? I don't know. But does it work for our team? And is there clear internal communication? Yes. And then for all external communication, there's a clear process as to where these people can go. And again, making sure that there's that cohesion. So anybody that's attending our event, there's no question. You don't go to one of our events and wonder what it's going to be like. There's a full breakdown. There's visuals, there's agendas, and there's an overview as to who will be in the room. So you know what to expect.
And so, you touched on it just a little earlier about, sort of testing and measuring this new approach. So how did you test and measure this, the sort of return on, I was going to say investment, but it's really more the return on process as you implemented it?
It's a hard thing to do because we know that, to have a client convert, depending on, what that lifestyle or life cycle of your client looks like, can anywhere be between, for some companies, you're lucky enough to have it in a week, and other companies, you're looking at years. With us, we're looking at anywhere between kind of 3 to 6 months. And within that time, I knew that by Q3 of the year that I had joined the company, I was going to test it in Q4 and then be able to analyze it by Q1. So that was a long time. I had to wait 6 months to see if my theory was correct. I didn't want to wait that long. And so what I did is I actually went out to every single individual that from an internal team attended our event. I got their feedback. And then I actually went out to a few of the attendees that came to our events to get their feedback on it. Is this something that they would do again? Is this something that they'd be willing to refer one of their team members to? And the majority of the feedback was positive. And anything that wasn't positive, I had the privilege of being able to iterate my event. And so while I didn't have, cold hard data to say that this person is more likely to convert from a sponsored event to an owned event, what I did know is the reputation that we were building and the scores that we were getting back from those that were attended our events was a lot higher than any of the feedback I had ever gotten from sponsored. So then coming into that new year, I then went from, a 90-10 split to a 50-50 split. And then throughout that following year, I kind of broke it down. And as I said, now we're at 90% owned and probably about 10% sponsored. And so did I get lucky? Maybe. Did I invest in the internal team, getting their feedback, meeting with our clients and figuring out what they actually need and what we're interested in? Yes. And I think that that's where at times people fall short. You can live in Salesforce all day. We can all do it. It's a cumbersome tool. It takes me hours to figure out and go through. But all you have to do is pick up the phone to a client and said, did you enjoy yourself? Oh my gosh, you did. You had this conversation. That's perfect. And then from there, what was missing? What was missing? Like crazy enough, I was walking my dog the other day and ran into this lady, beautiful little dog. We get chatting. She works at a media company. And I said, I worked at Hashtag Page. And she goes, no way, I attended one of your events. My first question was, how did you like it? And my second is, how can we improve? Because they are the people that are attending our event and who are going to make it successful or not. So hopefully that answered your initial question. I don't have a rubric to say this is how to do it. But what I do know is use your connections and just communicate. Figure out what makes people tick. And if it makes them tick, and to be honest, they're willing to give you anywhere between 3 to 8 hours of their time and they'd be willing to do it again, you're probably on the right track.
Yeah, it's I love how you've touched on that very simple but oft forgotten ability that we have as professionals to just talk and just ask questions. I think we sometimes get a little bit so sort of focused on data dashboard reports and how much, and I think this comes from a big push in the business community for as a service kind of business models where Google Analytics or website traffic or how many people downloaded your PDF or whatever that might be has been the quote unquote only way to go after data. And it's quantitative, but not qualitative. And, salespeople have a problem with this all the time. They're like, hey, I sent 1 million emails. Like, yeah, but how many times did you actually pick up the phone and ask a customer what they actually want? And, I think in this profession, we sometimes forget that we are in sales. We are trying to sell the experience to our attendees and to our stakeholders. And sometimes the best sales technique is just to pick up a phone and ask your customer. So kudos for you on that. So what makes your approach and style to B2B events different? Like we've talked about the stakeholders and getting the team buy-in and understanding that. But how are you approaching the strategy for your events and your attendees?
I have the privilege of working in creator marketing, which, as we know, is like the newest, hottest channel of marketing that I think exists at the moment. And what I did was meet with creators. I wanted to understand creators and what made their audiences engage. And from there, what I did was, okay, if I work for a creator marketing company and creator marketing is currently cool and hot, then why can't my events and experiences be the same? I think often people look at B2B experiences as, okay, come get educated, listen to our sales pitch, and hopefully you convert. No, why don't I start with, hey, come get to know us as humans, then get to know our company's culture. You're more likely than not probably going to align with our culture. And then from there, have an amazing time. So the next time we reach out to you and we offer you something or we want to jump on the phone, you feel like more of a friend than somebody that's being sold to. And so the experiences that I put together are things that people enjoy. We do something called a supper club series. We did just over 50 of them last year. This is 10 marketers, 3 creators, and a few members of our team going to dinner with one another, sitting around the room. One of the first questions we ask is, what's the last thing that social media influenced you to buy? I think every single one of us can relate to something that we've bought because of social media. And immediately there's a pairing there, right? That's not rocket science. That was a really low hanging fruit for me. After that, what I do is I really consider the attendee experience, as I said, start to finish. So, what are you signing up for? What can you expect when you're there? And then, what can I do that's a little bit of a secret sauce that'll have you walking away and going, like, wow. So, one of the dinners, I hired an illusionist to show up who made a goldfish disappear. Might be a little bit childish, but every single person in the room after a few cocktails was eating that up because you know what, your phones are out, you're all communicating around it. And so I think creating experiences that bring a sense of community are the most important thing. You don't need to sit down lecture style. It's been done. We've all graduated or chose not to graduate university. If we're going to spend our time going out and doing something, we want to feel like we're getting something out of it. And I think if COVID taught us anything, it's this need and want for a community. So my experiences are built around people leaving with more connections and feeling like that was a really good use of their time and they had fun. And that's on like the lower end of the events that we do. For our flagship events, for me, it's creating a production set. If you're to come to one of my events, at every single turn, I want you to feel the need that you have to pull out your phone and post about it. Because with that, not only are you promoting my event, but I guarantee you that you now know that you're having an amazing time, so much so that you're willing to share it out to your audience. And I think that's really important as well, and something that unfortunately is more often than not scrapped from event budgets. It's okay, how do we make sure that we have an ROI here? What OKRs do we need to hit out of this event? Education, sales, etc. Yeah, but we're also just dealing with humans, and humans just want that human to human connection. And they also want to share with their audience and their people what they're up to. Give them a reason to do that.
Absolutely. So in preparation for this episode, we pulled a quote from one of your key messages, and I want to talk to you about it, which is so calling all event companies, events can be your main marketing channel. And let's talk about some details on that. So how do you think tech companies currently use events as a marketing technique? And then where do you think it should go?
I think I can strongly say that most companies don't use events well, and that's because they don't hire the right person to come in and actually execute events. They think that they can throw X amount of money at an event, show up to it. People are just going to come up to the booth for whatever reason, and they're going to get ROI. So I think first and foremost, majority of tech companies these days aren't doing events well because their expectations on others to execute to the standards that they expect aren't necessarily being hit. And that's nothing on those that are actually executing the events. It's on the company not investing in the channel. So, as to what I'm seeing tech companies do, we're starting to see a rise of more and more tech companies build out internal events teams. And that's where you need to get to. If you want to show up with excellence, you need to hire excellence. And I think in doing so, what you're getting is at first, a lot of companies don't understand events. They don't get how they come together. Most people are fearful of the amount of details that go into an event, first and foremost, the cost of events, and they don't understand how you would even get to the ROI to make a hire worthwhile. Well, if you can't get to that point, then I don't think that you should be doing events. And whether that's you hiring somebody internally or hiring a contractor to test it out, that's up to you. But I think if you are looking to invest in events as a company and for a marketing channel, you first and foremost need to invest in who that person is. Now, once you've invested in who that person is, allow them to have ownership over their own expertise. You've hired them for a reason. Events for you either haven't been successful in the past, or you have chosen not to go down the road of them because you're fearful of maybe the cost or the details or whatever it might be. And so events can be your main marketing channel, but you need to invest internally before you can expect any sort of ROI.
And so do you think that comes from, as we were talking about data analytics in event professionals, where, tech companies are, for lack of a better term, does it feel like a foreign language for the measurement of ROI? You put it in sort of a long-term sentiment feedback
Mhm.
and reputational feedback where, I can imagine a tech company is sitting there going, yes, but if there's no way to measure cost per click at at an event.
Mhm.
Whereas that's why a lot of the general money within a marketing department has been put into those things in digital advertising and online marketing, because there's a CPC metric that everybody
Mhm.
sort of standardizes. If I put a thing on social media, I can see how many people clicked and how many people engaged with the post and so on and so on. And so is it about um, uh, sharing uh, better sentiment-based analytics and sort of translating it into that? Or is it about, as you said, sort of like taking a risk and investing in that person or department or strategy, and then and looking at it differently? And just before I ask you to answer my very long question, I will, there was some data that came out at the end of 2023 where we were analyzing the ROI on a per dollar spend. And I think the anecdote was only on average, most tech companies were spending about 12% of their annual budget on events, which wasn't an insignificant number. But if you started to measure that sentiment and that brand reputation and a particular piece of data, which was the how much revenue came from attendees and how much revenue annually came from non-attendees, the attendee dollar amount skyrocketed like 900%. So, which told a story that, yeah, out of all your customers, if they attend an event, they are 10 times more likely to spend money with you as a potential customer than if they don't attend an event. But the marketing spend was the reverse. So if they weren't an event attendee and they were just an online customer or whatever it might be, they would spend 90% of that budget there and only 10% of their budget on the people who are more likely to spend money. Which ties into a great statistic that came out yesterday, that online retail has not destroyed brick and mortar retail. In fact, it is statistically proven that if you have a brick and mortar store, it drives more online retail, dollar for dollar, which I just think is interesting.
I think as event professionals, it is our job and duty to go out and educate the market in a language that they understand. And so if we are talking to tech professionals that work in data, ROI, analytics, etc., we need to find a way that we can kind of meet in the middle and communicate not only what that is, but also how we can execute it on behalf of them, and then how it will actually go ahead and benefit them and their business. And I think right now there's quite a big disconnect, right? Because most event professionals are creatives at heart. That's why we're so good at what we do. That's why we can create an experience. And then you look at people that are, holding the piggy bank, and they're all analytics based. And so there is quite a big gap between the two. And so I think finding a way to communicate to them what this ROI can be. You can look at your competitors. If you have a competitor that is doing it well, again, we mentioned it earlier, pick up the phone. If someone's doing something successful, I'm sure they're willing to talk to you about it. Are they going to give you the brass tacks of exactly how they did it? No, probably not. But they'll explain to you why it was successful. And then it's on you to figure out how to do it. And so I think, yeah, meeting in the middle in terms of communication. And I did that at the company that I'm currently at. I figured out how to analyze the current data that we had. And I also analyzed, the types of events we were doing, along with that feedback from the attendees that we were getting. And so I took that qualitative and quantitative data, did it in a language that I understood, but they definitely understood. And then from there, as I mentioned before, it's really then there's a leap of faith as a part of it. It's not a marketing channel that everybody uses, nor are they used to using. But my future bet is the fact that if you are not doing IRL experiences, you are going to be left in the dust. Because after COVID, what we are seeing is, to the stats that you had just mentioned, people are looking to go out and connect in person. We are done sitting behind screens. We are looking to connect. We are looking to be targeted in new and innovative ways. And you know what? An old school way that's working really well is an event. Now update it and have the technology needed, that if for some reason someone can't attend, well, what do you know? Now virtual events are a thing and people are used to that. So just make sure that, as a company, what you're doing is not only you're investing in the event itself, but the event type that's going to work for your clientele.
Absolutely. So just to wrap up, I'm debating whether to ask you, what are the practical steps that somebody listening to this episode could implement tomorrow to create that sense of cohesion, as you had mentioned at the top of the episode? But I kind of also want to see if there's an event marketer, if there's some marketing team listening from a tech company, what is your first practical step that they should do to start building events as a primary marketing channel?
Let me answer the second one because it's a journey that I went through. If I was a marketing team right now looking into investing into events and not sure where to start, go and talk to your sales team. Talk to your sales team and see what they need, but more importantly, the questions that their clients are constantly asking them. And where is that wall that they keep reaching that they just can't get through to the client? What is that education that client needs or experience to get them past the finish line? Your sales team will be more than open to talking to you about what that is. Then from there, take that back as a marketing team and look at what differentiates your company from any of your competitors, or frankly, any other company that's out there. What is that carrot on a stick that makes you guys unique? Is it your culture? Is it your offering? Is it your location even? And from there, then start to craft an experience and start small. You do not need to go in with a big budget. But what you should do is take out your current and existing clients and put them into one room. If they're buying your products, there's probably a reason why. And more likely than not, there's probably some sort of connection point that those two people can find in common. Use that as a community. Get feedback from those people. Put them into a situation that's unique to them. There's nothing new with it, but take them out to a sports game. Make sure that it's casual. Make sure that it's open. And from there, then take that community that you're starting to build between your current clients, get feedback from them, figure out what the issues that they're dealing with is, or things that they don't understand, and become that thought leader in educating them and keeping them up to date so that when they go to their marketing teams and are having their stand-up conversations, they are then the expert in the room, and whatever that looks like. I think ensuring that your clientele is getting something out of your events is the most important piece. Figure out what your hook could be. For me, working in creator marketing, my job right now, my mission is to connect creators and marketers, and that is at the heart of every single experience. If you're a tech company and you're selling any sort of software out there, what's something in terms of the persona that you're targeting that they might all be interested in? Is it sports? Is it concerts? Is it Taylor Swift, that we all know that everybody's talking about right now? What is something that's hot, either within media or culture itself? Be the center of that. Give them the opportunity to come out, provide them with that experience, and then slowly just learn along the way. But my key takeaway is work hand in hand with sales. If you do not have sales buy-in, events will not be successful for you. Use them as your main resource at any given time because they are boots on the ground with your clientele.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Kerry-Anne, for joining us on the podcast today. It's been an amazing time talking to you. And if anybody wants to reach out to you, what is the best place to find you?
Best place to find me is LinkedIn, Kerry-Anne Hamilton.
Excellent. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks.
Production Value Matters, the business event podcast, is brought to you by Byrne Production Services. To find out more about Byrne Production Services and how putting on events can drive value for your business, visit byrneproductionservices.com. Make sure to click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. And on behalf of the team here at Production Value Matters, thank you so much for listening.